In this video, we're going to take a look at Mary Jane's Last Dance by Tom Petty. I think this song has a lot that it can teach you, so this is going to be one of those videos where I disguise a guitar lesson as a song lesson. Because my main focus here isn't actually teaching you this song, it's teaching you guitar using this song. Instead of learning every note, we're going to zoom in on the opening guitar riff and the main Mike Campbell guitar solo. And before we get into it, this video is sponsored by me. If you guys don't already know, I teach private one-on-one guitar lessons, so if you like my teaching style, check out the link in the description. Let's get into it. Let's start with the main riff. Our chords here are A minor, G, D, and then it goes back to A minor. The coolest thing that happens in this riff is the way it opens. Tom Petty, who's playing rhythm guitar here, instead of just starting the song on the A minor chord, if you go really slow, you'll actually notice that he starts just with an open strum of the strings, and then he hammers on the entire chord. It ends up sounding like this. This is such a cool move, and if you actually start listening for it in great rhythm guitar playing, you'll notice it all over the place. And the big takeaway here that I think that you could actually learn from is the fact that for people who are struggling with chord changes, struggling, getting a new chord shape in position quickly, practicing hammering on an entire chord is going to be difficult, but man, it will make you lightning quick at your chord changes. When you're actually practicing this, the thing that I would do is just make sure that you have your chord shape sort of in position before it comes down onto the strings. Obviously, that's the only way to really pull off the hammer on here. That's also a great way to change chords in general, which is why I think this is such an effective chord changing exercise. I don't want to gush about it too much, but it's great in this song, it's great stylistically, it's great for learning to change chords. Let's move on. The next chord in this opening riff is G major. And the thing that I want to draw your attention to that Petty does there is he kind of like hits the lower strings really hard on his first down strum of this chord, and then he hits a full down strum. So it's not down, down, it's more like... See how I hit the low E string really hard? I hit the root note, that note is G. I hit that really hard to sort of introduce the chord, and then I played the full chord. Again, it's one of those things you see all the time in great rhythm guitar playing. For people who are struggling with strumming, I think that this is a great way to inject some life into your strumming. It's a subtle thing that just ups the cool factor of this riff by 1,000. And honestly, those two things, the hammering on the chord and then the emphasizing the low strings of a chord before you play the full chord, that's kind of the main things I want you to take away from this opening riff here. We'll finish up learning how to play it just because it's awesome, but focus on those things. Anyway, next part in the riff is this D chord, and this is another one of those that he hammers on, but there's a little variation here. He hammers on the notes that are going to be on the G string and then the B string. That's your first and third finger. And then when he comes back to hit the full chord again, then he brings in his second finger on the high E string. So very slowly, the move into the D chord sounds like this. And then it goes back to A minor. The final thing about the opening riff that I think is just awesome that I want to point out to you is that the second time they play through it, on the first A minor chord, the one that you hammer on, Tom Petty actually brings his fourth finger in to hit this G note. It's the third fret on the high E string, so he's using his pinky for that. That's a cool thing to do because that note is in the next chord. It's in the G major chord as well, so it sort of leads into it in a cool way. You can hear the continuity between the two chords there. But anyway, other than that, he just plays back through the riff like normal. So here's the entire opening riff played very slowly. Look out for the hammered on chords, the emphasizing the low notes on the G chord, and then finally the adding your fourth finger, that note G, to your A minor chord. Here we go. And I should mention, for those of you who are interested, I will put the strumming pattern and the rhythm on the screen now, but the truth is, if you can, I challenge you to use your ear to try to figure out this strumming pattern rather than just reading it. This is a swung rhythm, it's a swing rhythm, meaning there's some interesting things happening with the 8th notes and the 16th notes, but honestly, the best way to understand it is really just to hear it. Try to give that a shot, try to play it by ear, and if not, like I said, I'll have it available. So that's the opening riff. Let's move on to the Mike Campbell guitar solo. This is my favorite part of the song. Let's start by explaining the song a little bit. This song is in the key of A minor. So if you want to take a guitar solo, like Mike Campbell does in this song, you're going to need to use the A minor pentatonic scale. That's the one that starts here on the 5th fret. Campbell opens his guitar solo with this phrase. Let's break that down. You're going to be here at the 7th fret on the G string, and as we're doing all of this, I want you to visualize that A minor pentatonic scale. You're not really going to improve as a player if you just learn like exactly where to put your fingers. What I want you to realize is like the musical context that this stuff happens in. If you can see that this happens within the A minor pentatonic scale, then you've actually learned something about music rather than just this song. Anyway, like I said, he's on the 7th fret of the G string, and he does this little half-step bend. So he's just starting here, and he's bending to this note, 1 fret higher, and then he's just returning to this note. But obviously it's a bend, so he never actually leaves the 7th fret. This is a super cool move that you see all the time in rock and blues. It's called bending to the flat 5. The flat 5 is a note that we don't normally play in the pentatonic scale, but it's right here. It would be here on the 8th fret of the G string in the A minor pentatonic scale. And like I said, he just bends to that note and then comes back home. Then he goes to the 5th fret of the G string, hops over to the 7th of the D, comes back to the 5th of the G, then he's going to return to the 7th fret of the G string, but instead of just bending up to the flat 5 and then back down, he's just going to bend up to the flat 5 and then cut off the note. So it sounds like this. So to play that whole phrase, it would be this. Next, he's going to play that phrase again, but with a slightly different ending. So it'll start the same way. And then this time, instead of going to the 7th fret of the G and then bending up to the flat 5, he's actually just going to go back to the 7th fret of the D string. So here's the phrase the second time around. And I should tell you, the reason that sounds final, the reason it resolves is the word we would use in music, is because he's actually going, he's finishing on the 7th fret of the D string. That note is A. That's what we would call your root note. Obviously, we're in the A minor pentatonic scale. So when you play A, your phrase will sound resolved, or like you've musically returned home. So here's everything we have in the solo so far. Now on the recording, Mike Campbell's actually doing one more thing to make this cool phrase even cooler. Whenever he's playing anything on the G string, he's actually playing a double stop on the B string. So a double stop is when you play 2 notes at once. And in this case, whatever fret he's on the G string, he's playing the same fret, but also on the B string. So it sounds like this. You see how I was playing the same thing we were doing before, but instead of just playing the G string, I was playing the G and the B string, but like all the same frets and all the same bending and everything still applied. So now that, with the double stops, actually is the complete phrase, and he plays through that whole thing twice. So it's like this. That's the part that I kind of want you to take from this. That phrase, the bending to the flat 5, the playing double stops, all these things are things that you can apply to your own playing, especially if you're trying to get into soloing, if you understand that they happen within the context of the pentatonic scale. Just learning these notes all out there by themselves isn't going to do anything for you. That's not going to actually make you a better player, but if you understand, okay, here's the flat 5th, let's say one day you're trying to take a solo and the song is in B minor, you pull out your B minor pentatonic scale. You can start your solo by doing a cool bend to the flat 5th. And you know where the flat 5th is because you learned it in this song. You knew that this song was in the key of A minor. You understood that this was in the pentatonic scale, so when you needed to use the pentatonic scale in a different position, you're able to just port over all the cool licks that you can rip from this song. I really want to emphasize that when you're learning guitar, don't just learn the song. Don't just learn where to put your fingers. If you do that, you might gain a good understanding of Mary Jane's Last Dance, but you don't really gain a great understanding of guitar. This isn't my quote, but I think John Mayer has said this really well before. He says, don't learn the thing behind the thing. So in the case of that really cool lick from the solo there, I wasn't just showing you guys where to put your fingers, I was telling you about the flat 5, and let's think about where the root note is. Let's think about the fact that all of this takes place in the context of the A minor pentatonic scale. That's the kind of thing that you need to learn to focus on if you're actually going to use songs to progress on guitar. This video has been sort of different from what I normally do on the channel, but if you guys want to see this kind of thing, or if you want to see a version of this video where we go crazy, and it's like an hour long, we just break down every single note, let me know. I'd love to keep doing this kind of thing. I love these songs, and if you guys are interested in that, I'd love to provide it. I don't want to flood you guys with information because I think between the opening riff and the main solo there, I've given you plenty to chew on, and also my second camera died. If you're thinking about taking lessons, please consider me as your instructor, and as always, thank you for watching.